I pray, literally, not just for Tucker Carlson to run for president, but for the preservation of his life. Because, of course, a man like Tucker Carlson is a real threat to the military industrial complex, the military and media industrial complex. He's a threat to the deep state. He's a threat to the current foreign policy of the United States. He's a threat to Benjamin Netanyahu and the frankly fascistic government in power in Israel. He's a threat to all of those. And all of those have guns, and all of those have a track record of taking out political figures like President Kennedy himself, like Robert Kennedy himself. They all have a track record of killing people. And that may be the reason why Tucker Carlson is showing such reluctance to enter the political fray.
Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I've got a treat for you today. As you can see, I am joined by the one, the only George Galloway, the host of the mother of all talk shows, 7-time member of parliament, and the leader of the Workers' Party of Great Britain. George, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
Always a pleasure. By the grace of God, good, apart from the obvious, being exiled from my country and being injected somehow with a heart complaint that I didn't have before the police held me at gunpoint in a London airport. But apart from that, Mrs. Lincoln, I enjoyed the play tremendously. Yeah, all good and firing on all cylinders.
Well, you bring that up. I just have to say that I saw the news that Richard Medhurst, the charges against him have been dropped. Does that make you any more hopeful? Have you heard anything or still nothing from the state?
Well, there are no charges against us, but we have reason to believe that they suspect my good wife, believe it or not, rather than me, of somehow harming national security, by which they mean, of course, speaking words and writing words, nothing else. Nobody in their right mind would suggest that we in any way harm national security. We just spoke words and wrote words that don't fit in with the official state narrative. That's the shape we're in the United Kingdom, I'm afraid. We have the largest number of people arrested for social media posts in the whole world. I mean that. We are living in a grim period in Britain, not just in terms of freedom of speech and expression, but economically, socially, culturally. This is not a good time to be British.
Well, I'm sure things will only get better. I saw that there was a joint effort made by American and British rabbis last night after the FBI stopped an alleged terror plot in Southern California and the shooting in Bondi Beach in Australia. And these rabbis were going on in America. They were speaking before the Jerusalem Post, and in Britain, I don't know what media they were on, but they were both saying the same thing, that there needs to be more censorship against hate speech. And they weren't just saying anti-Semitism, they were saying critique against the state of Israel, which they equate, I guess, anti-Semitism. But what do you make of this? I mean, is the crackdown already in the UK not enough?
Well, I think there's worse to come. Let's look at the facts. Let's arrange the facts. It is a fact that there are terrorist extremists in the Muslim world, and they have attacked, for example, Russian children in a playhouse, in a theater. They have attacked people in Paris, in Brussels, in London, and in the United States. Though it's strange indeed that the person who was the deputy head of Al-Qaeda and ISIS was recently received with full honors in the White House itself. The people who visited such death and destruction on the people of New York on 9/11. But that notwithstanding, terrorism exists, and it must be combated by all right-thinking people, and if possible, together in unity, because all countries have suffered from it. The problem is that there are the countries in the Western world who play with terrorists. They encourage them, as long as the targets are not them, but someone they have designated as their adversary. The problem is that even funding is given. The British and American and French governments funded ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria for almost a decade, and to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars and euros. This is not the right way to tackle terrorism. Everyone should unite against Islamist terrorism, which is a fact. But the problem is when you see the weaponization of the terrorist attack on Bondi Beach, for example, a heinous atrocity by the Israeli state, with Netanyahu bullying and browbeating the Australian government for what? For recognizing the Palestinian state that the Oslo Agreement promised them 30 years before. And the Australian government, in the former Prime Minister Turnbull, hit out at Netanyahu today, told him to quit bullying Australia. Australia is a sovereign country with its own domestic and foreign policy. It does not need lectures from Netanyahu, who has, of course, done more to foster anti-Semitism in the world than anybody else on the planet. Because every crime he's committed, he claims, it's a false claim, of course, but he claims that it is done in the name of and on behalf of all the Jewish people in the world. Now, you and I both know that that's not true, but there are many millions of people in both our countries who are not as certain on that point as we are. And of course, there's the long-standing suspicion that Israel and the United States have been in league with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, organizations on behalf of which I'm perfectly sure these two Indian nationals, the Akram father and son, were acting on their behalf. I have no doubt that the flags found in their motor car were ISIS flags. I have no doubt that their recent trip to the Philippines was to coordinate with ISIS personnel there. I've got no doubt about that. So I call for the treating of all terrorist acts as exactly the same, and that they should be met implacably and in unity by all right-thinking people, by all right-thinking countries. And one other point, if I may. I said on the Mother of All Talk shows 2 nights ago that if these 15, 16 people had been murdered on the beach in Gaza, nobody in the West would even know about it. None would have condemned it, and none would know the name of a single victim. Now, that's not, of course, to in any way excuse this terrorist atrocity, this act of mass murder on a holy day, but it is to draw attention to the double standards which have deepened over decades now and created alienation and hatred right across the Muslim world and beyond.
You know, I've never worked in politics. I've never worked in government, but does it seem normal to you that a foreign terrorist attack has prompted the state of Israel and their media apparatus to come out and blame Iranian Shia Islam responsible for this attack that was committed by, allegedly an ISIS adherent, ISIS follower? And at the same time, we now have Mossad, who has stated that they are taking over the investigation. Is that normal, or am I missing something?
It's very far from normal. And of course, those who know about these things know that nothing could be further from the truth. The ISIS mentality hates Iran, hates Shia Islam, regards them not just as apostates, but as people who should be put to the stake. I mean, literally killed. They hate Shiites more than they hate anyone else in the world. The idea that Iran could be responsible for an ISIS-influenced or even directed terrorist atrocity, to those who know about these things, is of course perfectly preposterous. The problem is, in your country and in mine, there are scores of millions of people who wouldn't know what I'm talking about in this regard. And they are the very sheeple that are relied upon by Netanyahu to manufacture consent for another attack against Iran. I hope they won't do that. They'll pay a very high price for it if they do. Iran is not anyone's punching bag, and neither is it responsible for atrocities carried out by people who hate them. As to the Mossad taking over the investigation, this is precisely the kind of bullying that the former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull was referring to today. Australia is a proud sovereign country, and it will, I hope, not tolerate this disaster that occurred on the Bondi Beach to be used to domestic interference in Australia and the weaponization of the blood of Jewish people on a beach in Australia to justify, to manufacture consent for the shedding of more blood elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't really wrap my mind. I mean, in the moments after the shooting, you had Netanyahu come out and say that it was a Jewish man that stopped one of the terrorists, and his name was Ahmed al-Ahmed, and he was a refugee from Syria. Incredible.
Yeah.
I want to ask you though about another conflict that seems to be on its way, which is that in Venezuela. We have the seizure of oil tankers, more ships, more vessels, fishing boats being blown up as we probably sit here. I know last night there was more. What do you make of this? Why is this happening? Is it about the threat of Venezuela exporting its oil in a petro yuan? Is it about controlling this sphere of influence? Is it about Zionism? What do you think is the main motivating factor here, if there's one?
Well, I think it's all of those and more, but one should pause to contemplate the absurdity of a man who calls himself a peace president, who was bitterly disappointed that he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize, is presently sailing into a military disaster, and a disaster in other ways too. The flow of refugees from Latin America will vastly increase if Trump goes ahead with this, and this under the watch of a man who claimed to be determined to build walls and stop illegal immigration and so on. But the man, by the way, who's just pardoned a major fentanyl producer and supplier in the last 24 hours, having already pardoned the Honduran drug runner who is now back in Honduras and about to stage a military coup there, a former president, no less. So leaving aside these absurdities, I've been watching over the last couple of weeks everything I could get my hands on the war in Vietnam, partly because I love the people of Vietnam, partly because it was, in a way, my first battle against imperialism, albeit safely at home. I struggled might and main against the American atrocities in Vietnam. And that was before I had children myself who looked like they could be Vietnamese. And so I've watched every film, every documentary that I could get, and how the American people can contemplate with such equanimity sailing into a new Vietnam, for that is what it will be. You and I both know Venezuela. We know there are enemies of the government of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, mainly in the poshest parts of town, in Caracas, mainly amongst the rich, many of them emigres, but the millions of Venezuelans, millions, who support Nicolas Maduro, who have benefited from the Chavista revolution, who've got houses and schools and computers in those schools and new universities and a new public realm, who have conquered illiteracy, who have benefited tremendously from better diet and so on. These people will fight to preserve what they gained from the revolution. And there's millions of them. And as our friend Garland Nixon said, Venezuela is mountains and jungles and mountains with jungles. And the idea that the United States, after what happened even just recently in Afghanistan, never mind Vietnam, would sail into such a conflagration, it seems to beggar belief. And maybe we shouldn't believe it. I am one of those who thinks that Trump will stop well short of an invasion of Venezuela. But every day that goes by, I'm thinking more and more that I may be wrong about that. I'm certain of this, however. If Trump invades Venezuela, it will be the last thing that he does. It will be the thing that symbolizes his presidency, and not in a good way.
Well, maybe that's exactly what he wants, and maybe that'll happen on Thursday, because on Friday we're supposed to get the Epstein files. And I guess he's got choices. He could launch airstrikes on Syria, some partial mobilization in Syria, something like that on Thursday, maybe Thursday night, or maybe Venezuela. I mean, is that too crazy to think about?
No, Wag the Dog was a documentary, not a feature film. Clinton wagged the dog and killed a very dear friend of mine, Leila Al-Attar, the finest woman painter in the Arab world, in Baghdad, to divert attention from a semen stain on his intern's dress, which he knew would have led straight to him. So it's by no means fanciful that to divert attention from what are pretty damning revelations that we've seen so far and more to come in the whole Epstein affair. It's by no means fanciful that he will do that. But of course, unlike some of these foreign adventures, but just like Vietnam, the Venezuelan people have the wherewithal, not least the moral fiber, to resist aggression, and resist it they will. And of course, airstrikes are an invasion. You don't have to send your soldiers in there to have carried out an illegal aggression, a war of aggression. But you can't conquer Venezuela by airstrikes. You might knock down some buildings. You'll certainly kill some folks, as Barack Obama once put it. But you'll not be able to control the politics on the ground in Venezuela by airstrikes. And so ineluctably, the pressure must grow to put US boots on the ground, boots that will quite quickly be inside wooden boxes, inside coffins.
Yeah, I think that is probably where we're headed. God forbid, but it does look like that. And you begin to wonder, is there anyone who has the capability to actually push back against these centers of power and warmongering and finance capital in the United States, in the White House? You brought up in a conversation with Tucker Carlson the idea of him maybe taking that sort of position. I asked Jimmy Dore that question last week. He said, when Tucker Carlson was on Joe Rogan, he was asked if anyone on the left he would support running for office in America in that position. He said Jimmy Dore, and Jimmy said right back, Tucker Carlson on the right. What do you make of that? Do you think that actually could be a possibility, or would they just never allow that to happen?
Well, once upon a time, you would never have imagined that a TV guy could make it to the presidency. And then came Donald Trump coming down that golden staircase in Trump Tower. So we now know that a TV guy can be elected president. And I don't want to mention the clown Zelensky. It is now a proven path that a celebrity can become the president. And Tucker Carlson is immensely qualified. He is Kennedy-esque. He looks the part. He sounds the part. He has clearly shown he has the ability to change his mind. He's been on a journey politically, and he's now much closer to you and I than he was when he was on Fox News, as he himself puts it, shilling for corporate interests. Mm-hmm. So he's a man with a fertile brain that can take account of changed circumstances and the eloquence to persuade people of the correctness of his current thinking. I pray, literally, not just for Tucker Carlson to run for president, but for the preservation of his life, because, of course, a man like Tucker Carlson is a real threat to the military-industrial complex, the military and media industrial complex. He's a threat to the deep state. He's a threat to the current foreign policy of the United States. He's a threat to Benjamin Netanyahu and the frankly fascistic government in power in Israel. He's a threat to all of those. And all of those have guns, and all of those have a track record of taking out political figures like President Kennedy himself, like Robert Kennedy himself. They all have a track record of killing people. And that may be the reason why Tucker Carlson is showing such reluctance to enter the political fray. But there's only two countries that can stand against the United States. And as it happens, both of them are formidably capable of resisting the current state of the US empire. One is Russia, and the other is China. And that gives me hope for the future. There are now limits to the extent of American power that there were not over the last 30 years or so. The possibility of the US attacking China, for example, is off the table. All of the war games, Hegseth himself just admitted it, all of the war games show not just China beating the United States in a war, but very quickly, indeed, beating the United States in a war. And Russia has withstood 27 countries of NATO who've done everything but put their own boots on the ground and are still talking about doing so, but it's doomed. The Russians have won the war in Ukraine. It's a matter of time only until that war ends with a great victory for Russia. So I hope the American people will be able to elect a president that will correct their course. But if they are not, that course is now, in any case, necessarily limited. But that doesn't help the people of Venezuela, doesn't help the people of Cuba, doesn't help the people of Iran. The truth is, neither China nor Russia currently have either the ability or the will to stop the empire in these egregious crimes that they are either committing now or are openly talking about committing.
I think that's a perfect point to leave off on. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Everyone go check out the Mother of All talk shows. It's breaking the viewing records right now, making Piers Morgan look like the nobody he is, despite the fact that he requires that $150 million injection. So, George, thank you so much. And I pray for your health and the safe passage of your family, hopefully back to, I don't know where your whole family is, but hopefully back to the UK all in one piece very soon, because it is a crime of the century. I can't believe it, just for speaking out against genocide. And I'm glad that people like Tucker and so many others are coming to your defense in the midst of this.
Thank you so much, Jackson. Always a pleasure.